Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Black Doctor Collective podcast. Today, we have Dr. Tamara Beckford, who's a board certified emergency medicine physician, an author, a speaker, and CEO of Your Caring Docs. She helps private practices retain talent and boost profits through employee retreats. So Dr. Beckford has been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, Voyage Houston, LinkedIn News, Rolling Out Magazine, and Kevin MD, so very well published and recognized. Dr. Beckford is a success mentor at the Entre MD Business School. They help physicians build 6, 7, multi-7-figure businesses. Entre MD is also ranked at number 315 on the Inc. 5,000 list of fastest growing companies in America. In this role, she meets with 50 plus physicians weekly from all specialties and helps them build profitable businesses. She has been named a LinkedIn top voice for leadership development and employee wellness. She co-authored 2 best-selling books, Made for More and Thriving After Burnout. You should check those out. I also own a copy of Made for More, so yeah, it's very exciting. And she hosts the Dr. Tamara Beckford Show and has interviewed over 220 physicians about their work inside and outside of clinical medicine. The podcast, named after the show, ranks in the top 3% of podcasts globally. And her content was viewed over 1.2 million times in 2023. So basically what we're saying is if you haven't heard of her, like, where have you been, right? She's committed to helping doctors and private practices thrive and believes in happy, vision-aligned, engaged employees are critical for success. The New Jersey Academy of Sciences recognized her as a COVID-19 hero because of her work during the pandemic. So thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am super excited to pour into our people. Oh my goodness. I know, when you're at the beginning of the career, you're like, what did I get myself into? Okay, we are here to help.
Love it, because there are so many things that go unplanned in a career.
Yes, ma'am.
And so having people really work to address that, I think, is much needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's get your backstory. Let's get the tea. I want to know how you became a doctor. What's your journey? Everyone has a journey story. So
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So my journey story. So we're taking it way back. So initially, yes, you hear me here and you hear the American accent, but I am from Jamaica, West Indies. Family moved to the United States in the final move. Because, for those of us, sometimes you come and visit and then there's like the move. So the move occurred in 1991. We were living in Newark, New Jersey at the time when my family initially moved here. And living in Newark, this is the 90s. You know how Newark is. It was a transitional socioeconomic state at that time. And we were in an environment where, unfortunately, around there, people were using drugs. Some people were living in the have-not state. My family are really big on education, like very big on education. There's a lot of West Indian and a lot of foreign people, and those of us here who want to move out of poverty or move out of a state of poverty. I'm pretty sure those of you guys are listening, you know what it is. Go to your books are the ways to get through. So I initially was, okay, I love the sciences. I thought, okay, I'll be a pharmacist. How did I come up with that? It was my father. My father was like, you should be a pharmacist. Your mother wanted to be a pharmacist. I was like, okay, I'll be a pharmacist, and I'm like 12, 13 years old. All right, whatever, daddy. So I did a summer program. Shout out to the pipeline programs that are out there for those who are exposing those in the inner city or, the lower socioeconomic to health careers. So I did a summer program in, this time for this one, I think it was in 94, 95. and I got exposed to medicine. But first, I was like, I wanted to be a pharmacist. So they said, okay, we'll have you shadow the pharmacist. And this was a clinical pharmacist. It wasn't a community pharmacist. Life might have been different had I been shadowing a community pharmacist. But the clinical pharmacist in the hospital didn't know what to do with a 13, 14-year-old. I didn't take any science classes yet. I hadn't done anything. They were like, all right, let me help. You can help us by putting these charts in numerical order. Okay. And we were in the basement. Now, for those of y'all, you know how your medical record number, they're at least 12-digit long. Imagine getting that done. And this was Manila folder time, people. I know that some who are listening, yes, y'all came with the electronic medical record. Now, this was Manila folder era, where you had to,
Mhm.
like, I physically had folders and I'm trying to capture the numbers and get them in numerical order, these 12-digit numbers. I was like, this is not the business. I said, okay, is this what the pharmacists are doing? I said, this is just not cool. So the next year I applied again to the summer program and I was like, can I shadow somebody else? And I got to shadow a doctor, and it was the patient interaction that really caught me. I said, we get to talk to people, and I saw how the impact of what they were doing on the patient's lives, the immediate impact, and it grabbed me. Now, is this to say that all my pharmacists out there that you're not having impact on your patients? Absolutely not, because you are. That's why we call you when we need our vancomycin dosed. We're calling you this
All
insulin
the time.
drip. Am I doing this right? Because you
Right.
are having the impact. But
Mhm.
I needed that face to face for me personally. And that's why I chose medicine in the terms of being a doctor versus doing the pharmacy route. And the road was not easy. I was not one of those people that says, oh, I want to be a doctor, and everything just cleared its path. Like
Tell
this
me
was a
about
Moses and the Red Sea type of thing.
it.
We still had a lot of struggles here along the way. A lot of this, when I look back now, it really prepared me for that grit that we need for medicine. It was good to be able to fail early in the career, in undergrad, when things didn't work out. And I saw the difference in people who everything was just working out for them. And then they got to med school and then things didn't work out. They got that one class that they can't get the grade in, and then it's like their life crumbled. I already knew the grit. I'm like, all right, well, if this is not going to work out, let me pull from that experience that I had in undergrad when I had to do this. And I did that. That's how life was between high school and then into undergrad and then getting into med school. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And I'm happy that I had the challenges, because that's what's making me that person who I am now that can pull back from some of those experiences.
Yeah, this is such a relevant topic too, because I was just reading an Instagram post. Project Diversity Medicine is a big Instagram
Mhm.
account, and they asked how many people were dissuaded when they were applying to medicine. And in the
Mhm.
comments, it was a range of people who had hit the roadblock and decided not to continue. And then
Mhm.
there was a ton of people who hit it and they were like, oh, we're going under, around, to the side.
Over
Right.
limbo.
So just really speaking to the grit of how you develop, basically how you develop your personality, and
Mhm.
that does contribute to you being in medicine, because you have to be able to see a roadblock and understand this is just a blockage, it's not the end of the road. So
Absolutely.
yeah, really
Absolutely. Yeah.
funny.
So I'll say also, while in med school,
Mhm.
it took a while, and some of us who are used to the cream rising to the top. So there's some people that go in and they just surfing the top. And then there's some of us that we're churning, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we get into that groove, and then the cream is rising to the top. I'm a cream rise to the top type of person. And one of the challenge that happens with that is that you get underestimated at the beginning. You have to know your path, and you have to be able to know your pattern. When you And it's important, like I said, it's your pattern, because the pattern at times will follow you, right? So you step into med school and you're churning, and then now you're churning butter. The cream is rising to the top. Now you're ice skating on your butter because you've churned and everything is solidified, right? So you're good. Then you might go into residency and you might be underestimated again during that part. But you recognize this is a pattern. I know that I'm going to come out on top, where there might have been another resident who comes in and they can answer all the questions ahead of time. And you're like, okay, that's nice. But you go home and you make sure that by the time you finish, then you are now in a position where if you choose to say it out loud or not, you know that information. You are a go-to person. You are the well-rounded person. You're the person that the attendants can say, I have blank person on today. I feel that my patients are in good hands.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very common emotion, I find, that when people are starting a new job or a new
Mhm.
training program, whatever it is, that they feel that it's like imposter syndrome. They're not
Mhm.
sure if they deserve to be there, or they feel worried that other people are going to find them inadequate in some way. That experience of knowing your pattern, knowing that you're likely to be underestimated, but
Yes.
also recognizing that you are resourceful and you never stay in that position. You come
Yes.
out on top because of your willingness to go and do the work and do the knowledge finding, searching, so that you can come out on top.
Mhm.
I think that's such an important quality for people to even recognize in themselves, which is why
Yes.
I'm like focusing on it, because so many
Mhm.
people get stuck on that first part of,
Yeah.
oh, I've been
Uh,
underestimated.
I'm underestimated. This always happens. But what happens in the end? So
Right.
you're just, so I step in, okay, I know I'm going to be underestimated. That's the pattern. Now, one of the things that I think is important that you mentioned also when we're talking about like a transition from being a resident to the transition from to being an attending, those first few years are rough, people. Let's just be honest. Now, I'll tell you my story. This is a story of a lot of us who were in financial debt. It would have been nice to graduate residency and go somewhere and say, I need to take 3 months off to go to Europe to relax.
Wouldn't that be
That,
nice?
that would have been nice. However, alrighty, I had no money at the end of residency. Yeah, like less than. And I did my residency in Philly at Thomas Jefferson University. My first job was in Texas, Houston, Texas. Now, Philly to Texas is not close.
Mm-mm.
My now husband at the time had to buy my plane tickets so that I can move to this first job. We're
Mhm.
talking about no dollars and no cents type of thing. My residency, I completed residency on June 20th of that year. And I started to work. And of course, I couldn't move down because when does your rent and when you rent the apartment, you can't go in until the 30th. And I started to work
Yeah.
on July 9th.
Mm.
That was my time off,
Oof.
the 20th to 9th. And why was I had no money. So I
Yeah.
had to work. And I remember distinctly, and this might be the experience of some who are listening, stepping in there the first day, and I'm emergency medicine. You just jumping in and everything's whoosh.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, all right, Tamara, you trained for this. You know what you're doing. And I had to really do that whole mental affirmation and then step in. Now, I went in there, and what I did prior helped to build me up. And this is something that can help either if you're finishing residency and you're listening to this, is something that I would recommend. Is that during my last 6 months of residency, every patient that I saw, I had my own plan in my head. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll present that plan to the attending, but I had what I knew I was going to do. And I
Yeah.
kept practicing that over and over. When I'm on my own, this is what I'm going to do. Because you had medicine is there's an art and then there's a science to it.
Mm-hmm.
You knew the science, but you also knew the art that you had to take. So the artistic portion of medicine, I knew that I would do this and this. And if my attending had a different reason, because we all have different ways to take care of the patient, I knew
Yeah.
what I was going to do. And I just solidified that in my mind. So the first day I went and I was taking care of all the patients that you're afraid of, the chest pain patients, the, oh my God, I hope I'm not missing this. I hope I'm not missing that. I just kept saying, okay, Tamara, you prepared for this. This is what I'm going to do. In the first few weeks, I had a really bad traumatic patient, a pediatric patient. And my hospital is not a pediatric hospital, but they had a lot of trauma because it was by the highway. And I remember going and boom, and I just zoned in and all my training, boom, boom, intubated, boom, transferred, life flighted the patient down to the medical center and everything. This was like in the first 3 weeks or so of me being and attending. And people did not know that was my first job. I didn't
Mhm.
realize that they didn't know this. They were like, oh, so where were you working before?
Residents.
Residency. But it's what it was is the confidence that I approached the
Mhm.
environment with.
Yeah.
And you notice I said confidence, it wasn't cockiness, it's
Mhm.
just confidence.
Mhm.
And when you step into a new environment, because nobody knows you, and this is the thing about a new environment, you get to write your story
Yeah, absolutely.
in that new environment, right?
Mhm.
So, what story are you going to write? Are you going to write the story of this person who comes in, who's timid, constantly doubting themselves because of something negative that happened in the past? Or are you going to use this blank slate as the opportunity to write the story of the person that you know you are, or the person that you're working towards being?
Yeah. I love that. I think so. A couple things. One, as a negotiation coach, I have to
Mhm.
say, people, please negotiate for a moving bonus. We can't be
Yes,
moved
girl.
cross country for free 99
What? And 0 cents.
and 0 cents. Yeah. So obviously another episode, but
Mhm.
definitely you need
Yes.
a moving bonus because
Yes, ma'am.
it's expensive and you're a resident, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. The part that I wanted to focus in on was the concept of really building your identity in a place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that starts with your own internal voice,
Absolutely.
not just how other people will perceive you, but it's what are you saying to yourself
Mm-hmm.
about your abilities, your presence there,
Mm-hmm.
because all of that really comes out in your behavior. So
Absolutely.
for you, you were like, I'm preparing. Let me start 6 months before I get into this job. I'm gonna know what I want to do in my head because I know I have to show up this way.
Yeah.
And so much so that you just worked and people were like, oh, she must be an experienced attending. Who was this person? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't have to say anything. It was like just perceived by the way that you were treating patients.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that component of it. It's what are you doing to build up how you feel about yourself?
Yeah. Reinvention is a powerful tool that I feel like we don't take advantage of it often because we live so much in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have made mistakes, but
Hmm.
we can look at them as mistakes or lesson. Like my dad calls them tuition.
Yeah.
That was the tuition. It was the tuition to get to where you're going to right now.
Hmm.
And yes, we've all made mistakes, and but we need to learn from them. We, I will never forget. And if we even think about it, let's just all be real, people. Now, everybody knows somebody that they went to high school with, and that person in high school, you're like, oh, that was that person in high school. And then they went to a different college than you
Yep.
did. And then you guys probably saw each other like at a college meetup event. And everybody was like, oh, that person, oh, they're this, they're that. And you're like, that?
Ooh, yeah.
They reinvented themselves.
Mhm.
You have the ability to do the same. Nobody knows the older version of you unless you bring it to that table. So
Right.
wherever it is that you want to go, reinvent yourself. And it's not being fake. It's not you being fake. It's you being and bringing out the person that you know you are and you want to be. And
Mhm.
as you're mentioning, as the negotiation coach, if you've decided if you've decided that an environment that you're in is not the one that you want and you're moving to another environment, that's the perfect opportunity to this. I look at life and I'm like, man, I know there's so many mistakes that I've made in the past and somebody can bring the mistakes up. You know what I would say?
But I learned.
There it is. It happened back then. I was 20 years younger than I am now. Like, how can
Right.
me, the older by 20 years, judge the person who is 20 years younger, 20 years less experienced?
I think people carry it as a chip without acknowledging how much has changed since that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So they make a mistake or they have some failure or some kind of setback, and they're holding that against themselves. And they're like, oh,
Yes.
this thing happened. But are you the same person that it happened to? You're absolutely not, because you
No.
definitely learned or grew from that experience. Like something happened as a result of that experience. You're
Mm-hmm.
not taking into account how much growth has happened since that moment. You would never do
Yes.
that again, more than likely.
No, but you are now blank years wiser, even
Right.
months.
Yeah.
It's like some people,
Even
moments, absolutely years wiser. Now, I know a lot of time when I look back and I reflect those first couple years, I think the first 5 years after training are the years of exponential growth
Mhm.
within who you are as a person, the type of doctor that you will be, and how you perceive yourself in this new state,
Yeah.
right? And I say that as a new state because I recall so many things swirling into my head when I became this new attending. Like I had $0 and 0 cents. I did do the free 99 move across country, but then I got my first paycheck and I was just like, it was a quote unquote supposed to be the bonus, but obviously it was the bonus after the move.
Mhm.
But my bank account changed. I no longer was in that immediate debt. And I still had the $200,000 from med school debt, but that immediate $0 and 0 cents debt. And there were so many emotions that swirled in my head. And I know I'm not the only one. One was, yes, I was extremely proud. Two, I became embarrassed in some respect. And then
Mhm.
I started to feel a little bit of a lot of guilt.
Yeah. Why?
So the guilt was not for me, but I looked and I recall crying because I remembered back when my dad first came, that I earned more in that one paycheck than he did the whole year. And
Mm.
he had to take care of me, my mom, and I just broke down crying. Like the weight of it all. It's just the emotional toll that,
Yeah.
but also I recognize that the years, it's different. I have worked this hard, but it just felt so, I had so much stirred up emotions. And I'm like, I just, with just this one piece of paper, because back then it wasn't electronic, you know what I'm saying? It was a physical check.
My first residency check, I have it, you can't see behind me, but there's a little frame right there.
Yes,
That is my first residency paycheck ever. That's the
yes.
first thing I earned as a physician. Chase,
Yeah,
but
yes. And then I started to, it took a while. And I'm addressing this because I know that I am not the only one who has gone through the varied emotions for earning well especially
Mhm.
at the beginning state,
Yeah.
where now you feel like I've worked so hard for this, but do I deserve to be the only one, especially in my family that has earned this much? And then you start to feel like I should be able to solve everybody's problems.
Oh my God, I'm so
See?
glad you brought this up.
Yes, because I'm now in this state. It's only A B amount. It's only
Yeah.
C D amount. It's only this. And it takes its emotional toll. Now, sometimes nobody's even asking you, but you
No.
are taking it upon yourself.
Yes. One of the things I tackle a lot in negotiation coaching,
Hmm.
because in order to ask for more money, you have to believe that you deserve it. And my clientele is predominantly Black physicians, a lot of
Hmm.
first generation physicians,
Hmm.
first generation Americans. So
Hmm.
all of us, I'm first generation American, I'm first
Hmm.
generation, all of us have this identity, and we experience that moment where we
Hmm.
realize we have the earning potential that our families could have used for the last
Yes.
however many years. When I think about the paychecks that my mom was getting, and my mom's a teacher, right? So
Hmm.
she came from the Caribbean. When she first came, her degrees didn't even translate. She used to work in a medical office until
Hmm.
and then re-earned all of her degrees, had to go back
Hmm.
to college, go back to grad school, all of this stuff. So I remember those manila charting because that's what they used to put me to do as a kid. I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, just that the weight of the responsibility
Hmm.
becoming this physician and being successful because you're literally standing on the backs of your entire family
Yes.
makes you feel indebted. And then I think when physician, when the career doesn't pan out to look the way you want it to, and when you start to have burnout,
The fear
you
comes in.
feel scared and then you feel that guilt. You feel embarrassed. How come I
Hmm.
can't make this work? People had it much harder than I did. I earned
Hmm.
so much more and I'm complaining. Do I deserve
Hmm.
to complain when I don't even think I deserve to earn this much money? There's just
Yes,
so many swirling emotions. So you do
absolutely.
talk a lot about burnout. So how do you
Hmm.
see this intersection of like personal identity with burnout?
Great question. The reason I even brought up the first 5 years is because that's when I feel like our us as early career physicians, that's when you're at the height of it. And part
Mhm.
of it was that emotional state. So that's
Yeah.
why I even transitioned into that. Because as you mentioned, some of the narrative that's going on in your head is I have now made it here out of all of these people, especially if you start to look at yourself as like female or a minority, the percentage is it's not even double digits.
Single
For
digit.
you, yeah, it's single digits. So you've already quote unquote beaten all the odds and you've done all of this. I should be happy. So
Yeah.
when the states where you start to find this level of uneasiness that's creeping in, then you start to feel that guilt, as you mentioned it. Now, for me, the way that burned out presented itself during my time as an early physician career was that I started to notice I had a physician in high school. He was one of my friend's dad. He was an OBGYN. And when I told him I wanted to be a doctor, the first thing he said was, make sure you do not bring it home with you. And
Mm.
I said, okay. Of course, at 16, you're like, all right,
Cool. Yeah.
cool. And then as you got more and more into the career, you start understanding. So for me, I had the ability to separate.
Mhm.
And then especially doing emergency medicine, then I truly separated. I didn't have to bring home charts in that I had to check up on this patient and call and do everything. Like I'm done. Once I finish my shift, I can
Yeah.
come home. So that separation existed and that helped my state of mind. When I started to be in an environment where I was starting to become more and more unhappy,
Mhm.
it seeped in through the door.
Mm,
It got into my house. And my husband was just like, you're just always so unhappy. You're always complaining about stuff now. And you weren't like that. And when I sat and looked back, and I'm like, oh, wow, because I was able to separate it before, but now it has taken over my life so much that I can't separate. So I'm unhappy. There are different things that I'm trying to accomplish in my life, personal things that it's just not happening. Am I blaming the job for these personal things that's not happening? It's not that it's just the job's fault. It's just that the external stressors that
mm,
comes with the job
yeah.
and the unnecessary stressors that are happening there at the job, yes, it's causing these internal issues to happen to me. If I value me as a person and I value my body, my mind, my spirit, then I need to make a change. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. That change for me meant, and this was during me, and like I said, this is a reflective part of me realizing this. That change for me meant that I had to change that environment. And that's
Mm,
what I did. Now, some people, your change when it comes to burnout you might not need to change your environment, but you might need to change your outlook on where and what you're doing at that time, right? And it's really a lot of self-reflection, dare I say, come to Jesus moments,
yes.
where you have to truly be honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There are some positions that we put ourselves in, and you have to be honest. Is this a position that you placed yourself in? That is this something that if I change my outlook on things, then wow, it can be better? Or is it a position where even though I've changed my outlook and I'm happy with myself, this environment is still just not the environment for me?
Yeah.
Exit stage left.
Yeah. So when you exited, did you switch to another practice or did you leave medicine? What did you do?
No. So I actually, at that time, and this is in 2015. So even the talking about burnout, it wasn't a thing at that time. I switched to a different system and I worked at a different facility. And it really made the difference in seeing that it's not that the grass is greener on the other side, but there are different patches of grasses all over. One of the challenge I feel that happens to physicians, doctors who just finished residency and you're at your first job is that your mind is myopic. Like all it's just that. There is a plethora of jobs, positions, different types of environments to work in, but you have not been exposed enough. So all is what's the next day. And oh my gosh, it's important for podcasts like this, and it's important for environments that exist, especially online, for you to see that there are other people out there who are enjoying medicine.
Yeah.
Why? Because they've created the type of life they want.
Yes. They've negotiated for it, I like to
Yes,
say.
ma'am.
Yeah, that's important. Like you said, knowing yourself, doing a lot of self-reflection,
Mhm.
understanding what is important to you and how you want to feel outside of work, because it will impact every area of your life. And
Yes.
then making that change. Is it me? Is it the environment? What needs to happen?
Mhm.
So now you're working as a CEO for Your Caring Docs,
Mhm.
and your bio says you help with retention and really
Mhm.
improving it. So, how does that happen? How do people make those kinds of changes?
So that additional change happened when two things happened in my
Mhm.
life to start Your Caring Docs. And then I'll tell you how I used that. So,
Perfect.
number one is as you move on into your career and you've gotten a little bit over, you'll never completely get over the drama of medicine and environment and trying to combat burnout. It's just
Yeah.
an ongoing battle. But
Yeah.
you start to become more confident in yourself. And then you realize that I have more to offer
Mhm.
than just being a doctor.
Yeah.
Once the initial portion of your life, You made it to med school, you're zoned in on being a doctor, and then you become a doctor and you're zoned in on being the best type of doctor that you can. And then once you've gotten that under your belt, you really look and you're like, what else
Yeah.
is it that I can do?
Yeah.
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 How can I provide more to life itself, to others?
Mhm.
And I got to that phase, and eventually, after dipping my foot into other different things that I wanted to do, decided on the York Urine Docs and in helping others to reduce stress and burnouts in different modalities. One, through organizations, burnout, stress and burnout prevention, and two, through private practices, helping them with their staff to improve the retention in private practices. One of the things that I've recognized in with burnout, especially if we're talking to us in healthcare field, is we see it, it's there staring us in our face, but a lot of us don't know the first step. And
Mhm.
what can I do to just get this thing from just staring in my face and sticking its tongue out at me and saying, you can't get me.
Or I'm with you forever. You have
I'm with you forever till the end, like Chucky.
right.
But there are a couple things that we can do. First, I often have people sit, and a lot of it is reflection.
Mhm.
Let's think back to, and I usually say like around the age of 7. When you were 7 years old, there were things that you loved to do.
Mhm.
And I use the number 7 or that age range because you're a little bit older than the toddler, kid age. You have a little bit more free range in your thinking, imagination. We haven't squashed your imagination yet by saying you can't. So you're really at that stage when you're like, I can do anything. If you're like my kids, they're like, oh, mama, you're flying off furniture. But they really have this big imagination of what I can do. What are the things that I am doing that makes me happy? If I feel like coloring, they just go off and color. If they
Mhm.
want to draw, they just go off and draw. If they want to read a book, they do that. But as time progressed, we squashed that part of ourselves.
Mhm.
And we did all these necessary things, but took away the things that were truly necessary to build us up from the inside. So, what is one little thing that you can do, even to just reduce your stress? Just go back and think, what is it that I loved to do?
Mhm.
And it's something like, did you like to dance? When was the last time you danced? Threw on
Yeah.
a jam and just danced.
Enjoy some hobbies.
Hobbies, just something, and it's simple. It doesn't have to be to the point that you have to schedule or call somebody to make an appointment. What can you do right now?
Yeah.
5 minutes. Just do it.
Mhm.
Just do it. So start by looking at that. And then the other thing is something that we mentioned earlier. What are you telling yourself?
Mhm. Mhm.
When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that's going through your mind?
Right.
Ooh, that person went on
Oh,
vacation. Ugh, I can't even go on vacation. I wish I could go on vacation. At this point, for those who are listening, I pulled up my cell phone and I'm scrolling through social media. Oh, this person, oh, look at that lovely life they're living. Man, I wish I could live that lovely life. All this negative. No, stop. First thing, pour into yourself. Pour
mhm.
positivity into yourself first thing in the morning. If
Mhm.
you're a religious person, that's you meditating and reading your Bible. If you're not a religious person, but you're doing spirituality overall, that's when you're pouring positive things in yourself. What are you telling yourself when you look in the mirror? Are you looking for your flaws, or are you looking at all the things that are so awesome about you?
Yeah.
Before you step out, even as you're talking about like the negotiation coach, like before somebody goes in to negotiate, they better build themselves up and let them know that you see what's
Yeah.
coming here. This is the best
Right.
of the best.
Right.
You want this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And
there, go ahead.
sorry. No, I was gonna say, especially the first part where you talked about you spending a few minutes just exploring your interests and understanding what has brought you joy previously. people often negate that by saying, but I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired, I can't, or I don't have time, etc. But
Mhm.
I think one of the things that's really important to note is when you are feeling sad, or like people who are experiencing depression or depressive episodes or just feelings of melancholy,
Mhm.
it is easy to, I don't say easy, but you know what I mean? Like people will not do the things that would normally bring them joy,
Yes.
but you have to push yourself into it, because if you were to go outside and experience,
Mhm.
sunshine on your face, or if you were to just do the activity, even if you initially were not feeling it, or you thought you were too tired, or you really were on the
Mhm.
way to talking yourself out of it, it does shift things for you.
Yes.
Staying and not doing it keeps you in that space. So what do you have
Yes.
to lose? You're already in the worst space. So
Yeah. No,
pushing yourself to get out of it.
action really is an antidote to a lot of what we're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
It's really the movements, the action. I remember, like, on my podcast, I was interviewing a psychiatrist. And when we're talking about like depression, and she said the first line treatment
Mm-hmm.
is movement.
Yeah.
It's movement. It's just like either exercise. And you'll hear me intentionally not use the word exercise, because exercise has the right. You tell me, all right,
Has
let's
a
go exercise. And
connotation.
I'm like, all right, here we go. If you're like, all right, let's move, let's go
Let's
dancing.
dance.
I am
Yeah.
exercising,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Dancing. And that's why I use the word movement, because it you get the same thing. You get the same results when it comes to the release of the hormones that's needed to boost you up and to make you feel good, without the connotation of you not wanting to get up to exercise. But
Mm-hmm.
it's, as we said, action is an antidote to a lot of what's going on and a lot of thing that holds us back. And even I'm here talking about this, but I've experienced this. This is not me just pouting and, oh, if you didn't want to do this, then no, I've experienced this. And I still work through that inertia portion of life.
Mm-hmm.
It is a constant battle. So what do? I just said, all right, I'm just going to do this right now and just done. Done is better than perfect. Yes, I can sit there and perfect it, but no, done is better than perfect. What is it that I do to try to, and what is it that I do daily to try to keep my mind in a state to try to reduce depression or to reduce burnout? Those are what I just told you. When I get up, I pour into myself first before I let social media pour into me with its the negativity or the comparitis, comparing yourself to somebody else's life that looks also glam online, but you don't know what's truly going on the inside. So
Yeah.
those are things that I do. I read, physically read and listen to audiobooks that improve self-improvement books, personal development things. The first few years, I didn't do any of that. I
Mm-hmm.
just let life be life. But once you start living your life with a little bit more intention, it's more fun and you get more things done. And then you get to meet more interesting people. And then they add and or enhance your life experience so
Mm-hmm.
much. So if there's anything that I could truly tell to some of our early career physicians out there is, if you're experiencing burnout, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
You might feel isolated because you may be doing your first job in an area where there aren't many people that look like you.
Yeah.
There you are indebted because of a program that you have signed up for,
Mm-hmm.
or all these things that can make you feel isolated. You are not
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah. I love that sentiment.
Yeah, reach out, look to see what others are doing, pull from their experiences, see if these are things that you like, or you might see something someone's doing and said, you know what, I don't like this, so I'm going to ensure that I don't do this. It's
Yeah.
all the same thing. You're pulling from. Set a goal. What is it that you want from yourself? Where do you see yourself within the next 6 months, the next year, the next 5 years?
Mhm.
Can you create that life? The answer is yes. You
What?
can. The answer is yes. There'll be a multiple choice question, A, B, C, or D. Yes. So whichever one you choose. The answer
Mhm.
is yes. And
Yeah.
then you go out there and you seek others who can help you to create that life. I'm pretty sure if you sent a message to any one of us here or who
Mhm.
doctors that you see on social media and you're like, hey, I like what you're doing. How did you get there? We'll tell you.
Oh,
We're not holding
absolutely.
any of this secret.
That's almost every guest episode of this podcast. Right? It's this is how, this is when, this is why
Yes.
we're doing, these are the options. So that's my favorite part, honestly. So in
Mm-hmm.
the interest of time, I do want to still talk about
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
work that you're doing
Mm-hmm.
and just to let people know what spurred you into that work and what
Mm-hmm.
are your main takeaways from working in that area.
Absolutely. So the spur into the work with organizations in reducing stress and burnout through workshops, it's because of the fact that I recognized during the pandemic that I was able to thrive. And I looked back, how is it that I was able to thrive? And it's based on the things that we just talked about. Me pouring into myself, me recognizing and having a power wake up routine, and using and utilizing some of these skill sets that I've developed over time. And that helped me to thrive during a time when I should have been burning out. Because
Right.
the pandemic is a time as an ER doctor, I should have been at the worst state, but instead I was at one of my best states. And it incorporated, like I said, the power routines, it incorporated the personal development, it incorporated curating an environment where I was around others who were thriving and wanted to thrive and wanted to be more. So my environment is a powerful environment. So I had no other way to go but up.
Yeah.
So in showing this to teams, showing them to organizations, how can you create that? That's what I do in that respect. I also have a great passion, as we mentioned, that I do work and I'm a part of the EntreMD team. And EntreMD helps to build 6 and 7 figure businesses. They help physicians to do that. And I am their success mentor. So as a success mentor, I helped with curating an environment where we sit and we're hashing out and we're doing the action. Like we said, action is the antidote. So we're doing these actions. So through power hours, through working sessions, just really hashing out and getting a lot of things done. When you're
Mhm.
in environments like that, so many creative ways to solve some of the problems that
Yeah.
those who are in their private practices are having. When we're
Mm.
hearing that a physician has come out and they're saying, I'm opening up a practice, that physician is opening up a practice because they want the environment, that community, they're ready to pour into that community to help and to serve. So when that physician has to close that practice, not only is it the debt that the physician has incurred, but that community has now incurred a debt because that love and that care from that person is gone, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, as a physician in the environment and seeing this, I created the private practice employee retreat to help our private practices with curated ways to build not just only team dynamics, but to help to solve the solutions within their practice that is keeping them from being more profitable and more proficient. And it's
Yeah.
team directed, it's individualized treatment. Practice A and practice B gets different treatment. And it's in an employee retreat, which is a half-day retreat that's done at a time that is convenient for the practice. Usually, if it's a day that the practice might be closed, we are incorporating 4 hours so that we can hash this out with the team. So it's team appreciation, it's team bonding, it's pulling out solutions, it's being held accountable for those solutions, all
Mhm.
within this practice time so that we can help them to thrive. That's the goal, to not have these private practices closing and that their environment's not suffering anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important work, I think. And invaluable. I think you and I work along a similar vein, which
Yeah,
is on retention, right? It's
absolutely.
because we know the power of especially Black physicians in a space. And so
Hmm.
I always say there's so many angles to attack this problem,
Yes.
and there's a problem of physician satisfaction. So
Hmm.
me, when I chose to tackle it from this negotiation perspective, it was what can we do as an individual
Hmm.
to shift the way we show up in our careers. And so I love
Yes.
that you are taking a practice-based approach, because
Hmm.
a lot of people will then benefit from just entering environments in which that structure is in place.
Yes.
And there's so many people that don't know how to do that for themselves, right? So at least
Hmm.
if they're working in these practices, or they're using you to shift the way their practice is run, there's just so much more opportunity to really improve the culture of medicine. So I love the work you're doing. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Like we
Yeah.
said, I think that what we can all learn, those who are listening, is we love what we're doing. We love medicine.
Yeah.
We're just trying to preserve it in a way that those who are coming after us
Mhm.
can be able to build upon what we're doing.
Yeah. And just be in a better environment, because honestly,
Absolutely.
it's one thing if you quit because you decide that you actually don't enjoy the practice of medicine. And it's another thing if you quit because the environment is toxic, or
Yes.
you're burnt out from the stressors of it. And so, how do we
Mhm.
reduce the stressors of it? And there's just
Absolutely.
so many ways to tackle that beast. And you're hearing now in this conversation that we have different approaches to the same problem. And
Yes.
hopefully, all of the people working on this problem from any angle will eventually result in such a huge cultural shift that everyone
Mhm.
behind us will feel those replications. So
Absolutely. I love it.
yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So where can people find you if they're interested in hearing your voice and listening to your story, or contacting you for their own practice, or maybe to slide a suggestion to their supervisors in there? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I'm available online. At a couple different avenues. For our private practice retreats, I'm available on my website, which is Your Caring Docs. So that's URCARINGDOCS.com. So it'll be / private practice. So you can check this out if you are a physician and you're like, hey, if this at the dropping of this, I'll have a couple master classes going. I do have one that's coming up on the 23rd of January. So if you are listening to this before then, I would love to have you come and to listen to this master class, which is 7 ways that 7 techniques that your team definitely need in 2024 to boost productivity. So we're working on team dynamics and skill sets in that masterclass. If you are on LinkedIn, I am very active on LinkedIn under my name, Tamara Beckford, MD. So if you want to send me an email and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about A, B, or C, you can do so at drbeckford@yourcaringdocs.com.
Yes. Okay. And we'll put all those links in the show notes as well, so people can direct click from there and find you, or see how everything is spelled in case.
Absolutely.
So that is fantastic. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Yes, and your work and your story. I think you brought up so many relatable points. A lot of people will hear what you're saying, recognize themselves in that story, and then decide what's the
Yeah,
action I'm going to take as a result of listening. So, really good stuff.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for pulling out this story out of me.
We try to get to the T on this podcast. We
Y'all
want to know
surely
how.
did.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much. Okay, so everyone listening, Please follow Dr. Beckford, Dr. Tamara on LinkedIn, on her platforms. You look her up. If you're interested in having a retreat for your office, or if you're part of an office that you know needs a little intervention, you just go ahead and click on the links in the show notes, as we mentioned, look her up, and then get going, because you are literally the person in charge of the change. So thank you for listening.